students are gone, but you are still here. And we know how you feel because you are done. But you have so much work to do to get ready for tomorrow. Good afternoon, podcast listeners everywhere. Welcome to After the Bell, a Stunt Brothers production. A podcast that gets inside the life of a teacher and provides a wellness guide for being prepared to take on this most challenging of professions. I'm Martin Stuvel.
And I'm Roy Hunt. And we share your pain, having taught a combined 70 years. The guarantee of this podcast is to make you laugh, make you think, and give you at least one little nugget that you can use in the classroom. So get out your marking, organize your supplies, or just pour yourself a coffee.
I want something stronger.
And listen, engage, and interact with After the Bell, a podcast for you, the hard-working, dedicated teacher who wants free lesson plans, free advice, and a free meal.
Okay, Roy, but I'm not paying for anything more than McDonald's. Well, Mr. Hunt, here we are, episode number 10.
Woohoo!
Can you believe it? Number 10. I mean, you didn't want to celebrate until we were here at number 10. I was ready to go number 2 or 3. I went, woohoo, but you said, no, number 10. Let's wait for that. And here we are.
And here we are. And just to let our listeners know, 10 episodes for us seems like a lot.
Yes.
And the idea is that for each episode we produce, we're in a box.
We are in this recording studio box.
We're in a box for 3 hours.
Let me out.
Sharing our ideas, recording, re-recording, and then re-recording what we have done.
And that doesn't include, all the pre-work we do. And then once we record, we have to engineer and produce it. So it's a lot of time. But this box is kind of the key moment.
Yes. And in that time, in those 10 times that we've been in the box and with all the hours that we put in here.
30 hours, I guess, right?
Yeah, easily. I would just like to thank you for being civil.
Well, that's kind of you, sir.
Yes. And, we are both strong, opinionated people, and we have ideas, and we bounce those ideas off each other, and we try to pick the best ones. Many times are mine, but we work them out.
You're still upset that I said you had your first good idea in episode number 1. Now I'm paying the price.
So, anyways. But it's a reflection of our respect for each other.
Yes.
I would believe that at this point in our lives, we have strong social skills, and we're able to listen to each other's ideas and then choose the one that we think resonates the best for our podcast. And it's a collaborative environment that I feel very safe and very comfortable.
I do appreciate that sincerely, because I feel sometimes out in the world it's not so civil anymore. There are certain things going on that sometimes you go, there's a lot of noise and people aren't listening to each other, and everyone, it's about them. And I think we come in here and we do listen to each other, and when we don't agree, we have ways to kind of appreciate what the other one says and then work it together in something that I think we can be proud of.
It's interesting that you say things that are happening in society. There's a lot of things happening just out there.
There's something going on. Like there's a rudeness almost I've noticed. I don't know if it came from COVID times and just has hung around. But even when you're in the checkup line and some people don't really appreciate that you line up and wait. I've been in coffee shops where they actually have signs up telling people to treat the employees well and not to be disrespectful. I didn't see those before 2020. So something has happened where people have forgotten what it is to be part of a society and to take their place in there in a respectful way.
Yes. Well, it reminds me of a dinner I went to in a restaurant over the Christmas holidays, and I was there with my friends, and we were waiting for our food. We had a conversation, and I just happened to glance over at a table the other side of the restaurant, and there were 12 people there. I'm assuming 2 families. I mean, I don't like to stare.
No,
right?
no.
But it seemed like there were 12 individuals having dinner instead of 2.
They weren't as a group, you mean?
Yeah.
Right.
It was like it didn't look like two families. There were people on their devices, maybe one or two people talking, but everyone was doing something different. And then I just glanced over at this young man who had his food, and he slammed his fork down in his plate, and he picked it up a pork chop on the end of his fork. And he started like biting.
He didn't know how to use his cutlery.
Yeah, he just started biting pieces of it out like it was a normal thing to do in a restaurant. And I was struck by the fact that no one looked over and said, "Hey,
no one
use a
said
knife."
anything interesting.
No one said anything. And so obviously it's not the first time he's ever done that. And, he'll probably continue to do that until someone tells him that, there is cutlery that can be used.
Yeah, there's some worrying things. And just to bring it back to the classroom, I actually was just listening to CBC, and I think you would have heard it too, where Mark Galloway has a program called The Current. And in the program, Mark Galloway was talking about how there seems to be more rudeness within the classroom. And he talked to teachers, he talked to experts across the field, and they all seem to agree that something is going on. The question is it because of COVID? Is it a hangover from that? Or is there something that we need to actually start dealing with in a different way that should not be something that we just accept?
That's right. I know that the term that's being used right now is called incivility.
Incivility.
And
okay.
incivility is rude or unsociable speech or behavior. There's a lot of research going on. There is research happening before COVID, and there's research that was happening during COVID. And I know there'll be lots of research happening now to see what's happening currently.
Yeah. I think that's important. I think looking back at my own career, there is a change. Now, students are wonderful. They're polite. They're respectful for the most part. But there seems to be more of those that have forgotten what it is to be part of a group, right? It's like that restaurant situation you talk about.
Yeah, and I know it's how getting in this case our students to see themselves as part of a group.
Yes.
To see how their behavior, how their actions affect others around them, and this becomes a teachable moment. And if it's not happening in the classroom, then where and when is it happening?
Yeah. And it's not about the diversity of the classroom. It's just about making sure that we are there to help this generation of students have those supports and understandings so that when I go to the checkout counter, when I go to the coffee shop, we don't see those signs anymore, because I think there's something going on out in the world that often we look back to the classroom to kind of say, okay, is there something we should change as well? Because as I've always said, teaching is where we change the world, right?
Yes.
And that's why I think this is the theme of our show,
I think
right?
it would be a very good theme.
Incivility, right?
Incivility.
And I think that's our theme.
Yes. What's that sound?
What's that sound? And there's the sound of the homework board.
Yes. And on the homework board, there is something that's going to make you happy.
Oh, is it a field trip?
It's a field trip.
I think that makes a lot of sense, right?
Yes.
We've been talking about incivility or classroom rudeness, as the CBC called it in their program, and we've heard and read about. And we could talk and talk, but you know what? We always like to go and talk to those that are in the trenches and hear from them. We have two teachers we're going to meet with to discuss the idea of incivility. One will be a secondary teacher and one an elementary teacher.
School. Yep.
So, Roy, I think we should have two parts to this episode. You know how we started this episode saying this is episode 10?
Yes.
What do you think? How about we make it 10A?
And 10B.
Yeah, and that 10B will be next week. And we can divide it that way and really get deep into this conversation by talking not just to one teacher, but an elementary teacher and a secondary teacher.
I think that's a great idea.
So today's episode will be with Owen Howell, who's a secondary teacher at Carson Graham.
And we'll also be interviewing Steve Zlotnick at Mount Royal Elementary School.
And that will be part 10B, which will be next week. Now, we are well aware these are two male teachers in a predominantly female profession. So we in no way want to say this is just the only perspective. But we're also not saying that males somehow have better control if their class, right? We're well aware.
Yes.
Not true at all.
That's correct. I know there are times when my classroom was in complete craziness and it looked like it didn't have a leader and my students were in control, and I was happy that there was not an administrator standing at the door just seeing what kind of things were happening in my classroom.
So it has no bearing on male or female in terms of you have control. No, exactly. But we do want to make sure we are including everyone's perspective, and we understand that this is an organic podcast. Send us an email and say, hey, I would like to come on your podcast. I have a different opinion. So we would be happy to have you as a guest on our podcast. You know, wherever you're from, come on this podcast. What do you think, Roy?
I love that, except we're not going to pay for any tickets to the Vancouver airport.
Okay, no one from Cape Town.
No, no one from a long distance away.
We can talk to you on a Zoom link, right? Yes. We can definitely have you a guest.
There are ways.
You don't have to be in person. So wherever you are, you can be a guest in our podcast. But today we're going to talk to Owen Howell, who's a secondary teacher at Carson Graham. So let's go over to North Vancouver and Owen Howell at Carson Graham.
Let's go.
Welcome, Owen Howell. We're really appreciative to have you on our podcast. And before we get into the nitty-gritty, we always start with an icebreaker.
Sure.
Right? We've done it a little different this time.
That's right. Our icebreaker is Gen Z ABC and Gen X 1, 2, 3.
Just say the first thing that comes into your mind. Don't you know? And it's also you have to kind of. I guess it's a multiple choice.
It's a multiple
one, right?
choice.
Right? Yeah.
It
on
is
Gen X terms and Gen Z terms.
Oh my!
All right. So I will say A, and I will give you 3 choices.
All right.
And I'll let you know how you did.
Oh, I already feel like I'm being an examination here.
Okay. Bougie. It is A, luxurious. B, active. C, happy.
A.
Yes. Well done.
Well done. Okay.
All right. Are you doing? Bussin'. Is it A, moving, B, really good, or C, fast talking?
Oh boy. Bussin', eh?
Bussin'.
Okay.
A, moving, B, really good, C, fast talking. It's B, really good.
Really good. Okay.
Yes, you're not Gen Z.
Oh, I'm definitely not.
Okay. Dank. Is it A, musty, B, popular, C, high quality?
It's definitely musty. I know my English language from that.
It's C, high quality.
High quality?
High quality.
Oh my! I can only imagine ordering cheese that is dank and calling it high quality.
Well, you'll probably have a better time with Gen X words.
Okay.
Number 1, headbanger. Is it A, a problem, B, heavy metal listener, or C, a headache?
Okay, as a former headbanger myself,
Nice.
I would say B.
There you go. Number 2, yuppie. Is it A, agreeable, B, young urban professional, or C, well-dressed?
It is definitely B.
2 for
Young
2.
urban.
And then third one, bogus. Does that mean something good, or B, imaginary or false, or harsh or nasty?
It could be B or C, but I've used it mostly as a B.
3 for 3.
There you go.
Well done.
We have discovered your generation. There have been more and more talk in schools and in the media about an increase in rudeness of students in the classroom, what the academics call incivility. Research shows this to be not only a North American phenomena, but a worldwide phenomena. Something is going on. So we're sitting here with Owen Howell. He's a computer science and programming teacher at Carson Graham in North Vancouver, Canada. Owen has had a variety of assignments as an educator at secondary schools and knows firsthand what it's like to deal with today's teenagers. He just doesn't know their terms.
That's me, yes.
Okay. We were listening to the CBC on the topic of rudeness in the classroom, and they talked of an increase in students vaping, walking out, sneaking time on the phone, and being quite defiant, and so on. What do you see in the classes that you teach?
It's an interesting question. Full disclosure, I moved from being a teacher of social studies, so mandatory classes, to being now a teacher of elective classes. So I find a little bit of a different kind of an approach playing out because students in my classes now, they're there because they've chosen to be there. It's not that they've been mandated to be there. I think maybe that plays out a little bit differently. But I found that generally students are quite appreciative of the class, of the opportunities they get. I don't get the walking out unbidden. That's something I set out from the beginning of the year. As of this year, I don't even get any real problems with the cell phones because we've got a blanket approach across the province, which is that the cell phones are not allowed unless the teacher gives permission.
And how is that working out? Like, what's the actual practice of that?
Well, it does still come down to the teacher needs to enforce it, right? I am, at my school, getting a good amount of support from admin on this so that if it is becoming a problem for a particular student, we need to contact home first. And after that, then we can get the cell phone down to the admin. They can hold on to it. They can have the conversations with home as well. And then we also have conversations with the grade counselor. And so that has also been working out very well.
And you've noticed a positive change from before the ban?
Absolutely,
okay,
I have.
good.
Yes, yeah. The ban did come in this year, so up until this year, it has really felt like I'm on the front lines and I'm kind of sitting there all alone because other classes they're allowed to use them or whatever. Not so much this year. And I've been able to enforce my rule, which is off and away unless I say. I find that it rhymes, and so therefore they can remember it, and that has tended to work well for me.
Do you think that's carrying over to their general use of cell phones? Because it was just waiting before the podcast, I was amazed. I saw no one on their cell phones, and they're obviously allowed to be on their cell phones at this time, but there was a lot of positive engagement going on, and maybe that was just a happy little view that was not representative of their non-school time. But is it carrying over, do you think?
There could be some carryover. I do see a lot of cell phone use outside of regular class hours, and I would expect to. A lot of times, particularly boys, before classes, they'll be sitting off in a corner of the corridor and they'll be playing a game. Often I find that they're playing a game together. Okay, so there'll be a 2 or a 3 or a 4-player game on their phones, and they're engaged together even if they're on their phone. So that, I suppose, it's not as bad as just being engaged in the phone yourself
like
and seeing everything
social
else. There is a social aspect to it, I think. Yeah. So I guess going back to, is it playing out mostly in positive when it comes out of the classroom? I'm guessing so. I think so. I think it was a happy moment that you saw because you saw that there wasn't much use of the cell phone. I do see a lot of times when kids will be on the cell phone and walking down the corridor, and I'm surprised they don't run into anything or hurt themselves, right? But that is, again, it's outside the classroom, and it's beyond my authority to be able to do any control over.
Do you think students were more engaged in school earlier in your career than they are now?
When you're asking earlier in my career, I think a dividing line is the dark days of the lockdown, right? It's March through June of 2020. I've said to anyone who will listen that was the lowest point in my entire career. And if I had to go back to doing that again, I'd probably take early retirement. And so prior to that, I had been a lot more doing social studies and now a lot more doing the programming and computer science. So there are two elements to that. Were they engaged? They were engaged when it was something that they were really interested in the social studies curriculum or the law curriculum or history curriculum. Then I could see them being engaged. But I do recall, it may be coloring, through the dusts of time. It may be coloring my view, but I do recall looking out and seeing a classroom full of, the eyes are open, but no one's answering the door. So the lights are on, but no one's answering the door. And I could remember feeling that a lot more in a social studies class than I do in my classes now. So I guess that is prior to COVID and then since COVID.
And just for listeners, because CBC did go on about the time of the pandemic being a real turning point in terms of kids losing engagement. Now, refresh my memory. In North Vancouver, unlike Ontario, where I think kids were out much longer, what was the actual pandemic schedule for students? There was the first part where they were all at home, but then was it a bit of a hybrid model?
It was definitely a hybrid model. For the year following, we refer to it the lockdown, right? The start of the next school year, grade 8s were in school full time, but grade 9 through 12, they were hybrid. So they would be there every other, like half the class would be there every other day. And so I would teach the students who were in the room and then essentially repeat that lesson for the next group of students who were in the room. And at the same time, I would have them working on some things at home when they're working remotely, right? And extensive use of Teams and that kind of thing in order to get that information out.
Were there effects from that time, that hybrid time, that you saw more when kids were back full-time and it's kind of lessened over the last couple years in terms of the impact of them being online so much or being at home when we first got back and there was no more hybrid system? Maybe you saw changes that dramatically altered their civility or their interaction with each other, and has it lessened since that time? Do you understand what I mean?
I do understand what you mean.
Yeah.
Not really noticed so much as a change in their civility, but certainly their expectations of me as a teacher, of what they can expect to be given to them, that has changed. The expectation that we're always on, and that therefore they can message me at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, and okay, I can't find this on the team. Where am I looking? And can you give me a tutorial now on this? I've seen that a lot more. And I suppose there is an element of civility in that too, of, look, when I was in high school, I fully expected that my teachers would be available to me while at school, or if I went to a tutorial or a help session, they'd be available for me there. But I certainly wasn't expecting that they would be available to me all of the time.
And do you find parents are also expecting you to be available all of the time, right? There's probably a change there as well.
There is somewhat of a change. When they're reaching out, I don't know that they're necessarily expecting that I'm going to be answering right away, but I get the impression that if I put that out there, then I'm expecting an answer sooner.
Yeah. And I think we sometimes make the mistake of answering right away, and it's 12 at night, and then they think that's you're 24/7, right?
That's
so
right.
We have
Yes.
to be careful.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
So, what are some examples that you see in terms of rudeness or incivility that you get in the classroom?
In preparation for today, I have actually asked some of my colleagues, and
yes,
so
that's good.
Absolutely. So one of the things that I have, or that others, my colleagues have encountered, has been just I suppose one could call it a disengagement. It's waiting for the material to be delivered to me, the student, and I'm going to put less effort into gleaning that information, right? So we don't use textbooks so much anymore because the textbooks aren't available or they're not updated or whatever. And so, okay, I'm going to wait till the teacher gives me the notes package or the notes where I have to fill in the blanks or the package that I need to study from before I do anything. So that's maybe something that has been encountered. As far as civility in the classroom for myself, the cell phones are no longer so much of an issue. I do still find that the evidence of incivility comes in the students having a conversation on their own or interrupting me as I'm trying to present to an entire class, right? So as a computer teacher, what I will do is I will give a demonstration for the entire class and then go around and help individuals, right? If I'm halfway through a demonstration and I get a hand go up and can I go to the washroom now? That drives me crazy, right? Yeah. Or else, I'm halfway through it. They need to know this part. I know they need to know this part. They even know they need to know this part. And then I see, the kids whispering in the back and then, okay, I've got to do something, right? So that I've seen. I don't know that that's more since the dark days of COVID or whether that's on the increase or not. I don't have any kind of a definitive data to say that for myself. I just know that's frustrating and it continues, right?
And this one teacher who talked on the CBC broadcast talked about an increase with incivility between students, saying students themselves have noticed that just some of the offhand comments they say to each other are more blunt, more rude, more things you tend to see online and places like that where you're anonymous, but now people are saying it to people's faces at school. They say it's getting worse. It's not based in any general study. It was just anecdotal. What do you think about that?
I've seen evidence that supports that, actually. We've had, in staff meetings and member meetings, we had discussions around concerns over increasing instances of misogynistic comments, of generally rude comments, or the I have an opinion, so I must be right and you're an idiot kind of a comment. We really saw it come out when Andrew Tate was gaining popularity, and there were some really uncomfortable instances that I can remember of just misogyny to where I wouldn't have expected to see it, and it being right in front of me. So, okay, do you think I'm not going to deal with this now? Right. But that it should be so open, it was kind of surprising to me.
Do you think that some cases of incivility occur due to a lack of skills or confidence in a student?
Yes, I can see that. A part of our job as teacher is we're not just teaching the curriculum, we're teaching all of those skills as well. I own that. I take that on. We're teaching social skills, we're teaching communication skills, we're teaching how do you relate to those people around you in a way that's going to be productive and helpful and respectful. So I take that on myself, and I think we all should, of course. But do I see that there are challenges with that? Absolutely. It's grist for the mill for us as teachers, of course.
But it sounds like teachers are not just throwing up their hands and saying, I can't do anything about this. They realize it's an issue, as so many things come into the classroom, and they are dealing with it in their way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely we deal with it. And it's, I see it as an expectation for all of us as adults, whether we're a teacher, whether we're a parent, whether we're a coach, whoever we are. It's learning is not something that just happens in the four walls of a classroom, right? But where I take it on is in how I present myself as an example of what I think civility should be. So what I think should be the interactions that a responsible, kind adult should have with each other. Yeah. So,
what collectively have you done as teachers and as staff to work with students with incivility?
One of the approaches that we have taken has been and it isn't like limited to incivility or teaching civility, teaching social skills. It's been around noticing any positive behaviors that students have, or performance behaviors that students have, where we notice something and we call attention to the positive thing. So it's the positive reinforcement rather than saying, oh, you should not have done that. Right. That's not going to be helpful to anyone, because the student who gets that is going to shut down. But noticing and nurturing and identifying the positive interactions, and then modeling positive interaction as well, right? An example where I have sometimes seen incivility is with interruptions. For example, if I'm seeing a conversation happening during a demonstration where I need them to be listening, but they aren't, I'll stop and I'll just wait. So it's not an issue of an attack, it's an issue of respecting a conversation that happens. Often they will realize, oh yeah, he stopped talking, and this is the reason for it, right? And it's because he's waiting for me to stop, when really I shouldn't have started to begin with. So I'm not calling them on it. I'm just allowing them to recognize it.
And that Roy and I both listened to this podcast called It's Hidden Brain, and they had an episode called How Rude, with the podcast host is Shankar Vedantam. And it was the effects of incivility on society. And they talked about how there are kind of downstream effects of incivility. And that's the problem with the classrooms. We often are just a microcosm of the greater society, right? And there are effects, and people talk about it, whether it's online, whether it's waiting in the grocery store and having someone, be rude to the checkout person. Do you see the need for, instead of us always going to the classroom and saying, let's solve the problem here, that there's also things out in the greater society and things and changes that need to happen there as well, rather than put it all on the school?
Oh, please, yes. Don't put it all, don't put it all in the classroom. None of us can solve the world's problems just from the classroom. It is a place, certainly. But as I say, it is the burden of teachers, the burden of administrators, the burden of coaches, the burden of parents, right? It is on all of us to model appropriate behavior and to nurture the positive interactions so that students, so that children can see what a positive interaction looks like, and then hopefully that is taken up.
So how do schools and how do teachers involve parents to deal with incivility in a way that is constructive?
How do schools
and parent communities?
And are they aware?
Are parents aware of it?
I don't know. That's an interesting question. I don't know whether parents are aware of it in the same way that we as teachers or the school system is aware of it, because, let's be honest, the child acts differently at home than they do at school. I can see this not only for the students in front of me, but my own children.
My own children too. Yes,
we both know exactly. Yeah,
absolutely. And yeah. So it's curious because I've observed my own kids. I have 3 kids. I've observed them all in their friend group. I've observed them all in different kinds of circumstances where they weren't even necessarily sure that I was observing them. So, you know, they're almost a different person. So are they aware of what we're facing or vice versa? I'm not entirely sure.
What can we do to bring parents into the conversation, do you think?
Wow, that's a tough one.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a very limited scope, but when we have, for example, parent-teacher interviews or learning conferences, I think they call them now, the tradition at a high school has always been the parents come in, but the student doesn't. But to have it more of a conversation and allow there to be the conversation around behavior and deportment and the tone in the classroom and all those kinds of things, I think that would be a positive way to do that.
I always found it worked best when the student was there, like just because you know how it is. You know, the parents go, "That's not. They're not that at home. What are you talking about, right?" And they play one against the other. But if the child's sitting there, it's much to get to the heart of it. You know,
absolutely,
call them on things. Yeah.
It does happen on occasion where we'll get the students come in. I find sometimes it's the case where the student needs to come in to translate for the parents, that brings in another level of
what are they actually saying?
Yeah, exactly. Really, because that's not the tone of or expression on his face. It does happen where occasionally the student will come in with the parents, and that's a golden time, right?
Yeah.
And then that conversation is very fulsome, but also quite different than if the parent is coming in on their own. Right. Certainly.
So what do you worry about if we don't see some changes? I mean, the positive is during this interview, cell phones are out of the pictures at school, so that is a positive. Mm-hmm. But do you have some worries about what would happen if we don't see changes?
Well, all we need to do is look at the popular discourse, right? I was about to say, look at the leadership south of the border and all of the support he got.
Yeah.
That's worrisome, right? So, yeah, I can see similar attitudes coming here at times, not attempting to be apolitical, but I'm able to see some of those concerns here. And that discourse is not just on the political level. There's a social knock-on effect of that, as I said earlier, the approach that, well, I have an opinion, I must be right because it's my opinion, and you're an idiot because you didn't accept my opinion. I've seen that, certainly, and, that not in the classroom per se, but, I mean, that is part of the social discourse. The danger is that if we don't address incivility, if we don't address proper social skills, that becomes worse and worse, and that it manifests itself in more negative reactions from generally in society with a knock-on effect going down 10 years, 20 years, 30 years.
Yeah.
So.
Well, Owen, we both appreciate you taking this time. Both Roy and I have known you for quite a long time, and we know you have a fantastic reputation in this district, and it's just wonderful to hear your perspective, and it's a valid perspective, and it's a genuine understanding of the issue, and we know what a wonderful teacher you are in North Vancouver, so thanks for this.
Thank you.
I'm happy to be here in the sense that I'm an elementary school teacher, and the lens that I have is quite different than the lens that you have, and I'd love hearing your perspective.
Wonderful. Thank you. It's been an honor to speak with you.
Thank you. Thanks so
Thank
much.
you.
This podcast is organic, taking shape with each episode. Building resiliency for teachers everywhere.
That sounds great.
And our website is stuntbrothers.ca.
That's stuntbrothers.ca.
We will chat again
After the bell.